Chosen one. It wasn't when you were strong. It wasn't when you were standing in a crowd with your hands raised high and everyone could see your faith. It was a different moment. It was when you felt that old familiar pull, that fire in your chest, that voice in your gut telling you to react, to strike back, to say exactly what you wanted to say, and you didn't. Heaven went quiet, not because something went wrong, because something went right for the very first time. I need you to hear this, because what happened in that 5-second moment? What happened when nobody was watching, when nobody was recording, when the only witness was the ceiling of whatever room you were standing in? That moment just moved something in eternity. You have been praying for years. You have been faithful in silence. You have carried grief that has no name. You have smiled on Sunday mornings when your soul was weeping. You have been misunderstood by the very people who should have known you best. You have stood at the edge of giving up more times than anyone will ever know. And yet, you stayed. And today, just hours ago, maybe you did something small. So small, the world would never write a song about it. So quiet, no award will ever be given for it. But listen to me, chosen one. A hinge is one of the smallest things on a door. You never notice it. You never think about it. But move that hinge just a fraction of an inch, and a 1,000-pound door swings open. That quiet moment of yours? That was the hinge. Deep in the earth right now, there is a seed you cannot see. It cracked open underground weeks ago. No sunlight reached it. No one watered it. No one knew it was even alive. But it is irreversible now. What God planted in you, that thing you almost gave up on, it cracked open today. And nothing hell can do will put it back the way it was. Before this message ends, I am going to show you why that one decision you made changed more than your mood. It changed your timeline. If this message found you at the exact moment you needed it, type these 3 words in the comments right now. God saw it, because He did. Stay with me, because what looked small in your life may be the very thing heaven is building your entire next season on. Before we go deeper, I'm going to show you 3 things. What exactly you did that made God smile, why the enemy reacted so violently after it, and what is already beginning to shift in the next 40 days because of it. Don't go anywhere. Let me ask you something that may shake you. What if the hardest weeks of your life were not a crisis, but an examination? What if God wasn't silent during your struggle, He was scoring it? Here is a truth that most preachers will not say out loud. The most important tests God ever gives you do not look spiritual while you are inside them. They do not arrive wrapped in scripture. They do not come announced with a trumpet. They come disguised as a Tuesday afternoon, a text you wanted to send but didn't, a conversation that made your blood boil, a moment when you had every right to explode and you swallowed it instead. That was the test. Not the Sunday morning, not the prayer meeting, the Tuesday afternoon. Think about your last few weeks. Really think. Did someone say something that cut right through you and you stayed quiet? Did someone misrepresent you and you did not retaliate? Did you sit with pain that no one else saw and you still showed up the next morning? Did you want to collapse into despair and instead you chose to worship through clenched teeth? You thought you were just surviving. Heaven was measuring transformation. You thought you were barely holding on. God was watching the most important thing He has ever watched, in you, the distance between what you felt and what you chose. Jesus said it in Luke 16:10. Whoever is faithful in a very little thing is also faithful in much. Do not miss the weight of that word. Not faithful in a big moment, faithful in a very little thing. That text you chose not to send, that was your little thing. That retaliation you swallowed in silence, that was your little thing. That morning you woke up and worshipped God when absolutely nothing in your life had changed, that was your little thing. And God just classified it as much. James 1:12 says, Blessed is the one who perseveres under trial, not the one who never struggled, not the one who had it easy, the one who persevered. That is you. That has always been you. Now I need to speak directly to some of you, because you have been carrying something I do not want you to carry quietly any longer. Some of you have spent decades being the one who kept the peace. In your marriage, in your family, in your church, in your workplace. While others fell apart, you held it together. While others spoke recklessly, you measured every word. While others walked away, you stayed. You buried people you loved and got back up. You survived disappointments that would have destroyed someone half your age. You carried children, grandchildren, and sometimes strangers on a back that was already breaking, and you never once got a standing ovation for it. But listen to me, chosen one. Listen carefully. What exhausted you on earth was not wasted in heaven. God weighs hearts in private rooms, not in stadiums, not on platforms. In the hidden, quiet, unseen rooms of your most private moments, that is where the real weighing happens. And the weight of your private obedience, the prayers no one heard, the bitterness you refused to pick up, the anger you laid back down, that weight has been accumulating in heaven's record, like compound interest on a bank account you forgot you opened. Galatians 6-9. Do not grow weary in doing good, for in due season you will reap. If you do not give up, you did not give up. You are still here. That alone is one of the most profound acts of faith I have ever witnessed. Now here is where this becomes urgent, and I need you to lean in. There is something ancient about the pattern you just broke. Not just a bad habit, not just an emotional reaction. Something that has been running in your life for years, maybe decades, a groove so deep that it became automatic. React, defend, retaliate, protect, collapse. And in that one quiet moment you stepped out of the groove. You chose the new self over the old self, the healed version over the wounded version, the spirit over the flesh. Tiny keys open vault doors. Your restraint was the key. The vault that just swung open, you do not even know what is inside it yet. The battle was never in the room where it happened. The battle was in your reaction, and you won it. If that has been your fight, if you have been battling the pull to react the old way, I want you to type this in the comments right now. I didn't react the old way. Declare it, because that declaration matters in the spirit realm. In a moment, I am going to show you something that will make the hair on the back of your neck stand up. Why the enemy panics when you stop feeding old patterns. Because when you break the cycle, you do not just free yourself. You break something ancient, and hell knows exactly what that means even when you don't. Let me ask you something nobody else has ever asked you directly. When was the last time someone said thank you for what you did when nobody was watching? When was the last time someone honored you for the anger you swallowed? The words you didn't say. The door you quietly closed on something that used to destroy you. I'll tell you when. Never. The world never threw you a parade for that. But heaven? Heaven kept a different kind of record. The Bible says it plainly in 1 Samuel 16-7. Man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. Not your performance, not your public reputation, not how polished you looked on Sunday morning, your heart. And here is the truth that will shake you to your core. Anyone can perform religion. Anyone can raise their hands in a crowded church. Anyone can post a scripture and collect the likes. Public devotion can be rehearsed. Public devotion can be faked. But private obedience, you cannot manufacture that. You cannot perform your way into it. When you forgave someone before your feelings caught up, before you even wanted to forgive, that was real. That was God. That was transformation happening beneath the surface where no camera could reach. When you stayed gentle after someone betrayed you, when everything in your body was screaming to retaliate, and you chose silence instead, heaven leaned forward. When you got on your knees in prayer instead of picking up the phone to panic in a moment when most people would have spiraled, God took notice. When you closed the door on that old appetite, that habit, that pattern, that person when closing it cost you something, God did not just notice. He smiled. Jesus said it in Matthew 6:6. When you pray, go into your room, close the door, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you. Your Father who sees in secret, not hears, not tolerates, sees. He was in that room with you. He was there in your car when you cried alone. He was there in your kitchen at 3 inches the morning when you poured out what you couldn't say to another living soul. And every single second of it, every tear, every surrender, every moment you chose His way over your own, it was recorded. The prophet Zechariah said, "Do not despise these small beginnings, because God does not measure the way the world measures. The world measures volume, God measures faithfulness. The world celebrates what trends, heaven celebrates what costs." You may have spent years watching people with half your integrity get twice the recognition. You may have watched someone louder, flashier, and less faithful than you get handed the platform you prayed for. And you stayed faithful anyway. Do you understand what that means? That is not weakness. That is not invisibility. That is a lamp burning in a closed room, giving off real light, real heat, real power, even when no one outside knows it's on. Heaven keeps a record of what pain could not corrupt. Think about what you have survived. Think about what tried to make you bitter and didn't. Think about what tried to turn you into the very thing that hurt you and failed. You refused to become that. You refused to let suffering rewrite your character. The Father watched every second of that war. He smiled over you the way a father smiles, watching his child finally take steady steps. Not because the steps were perfect, because they were yours, because they proved something had changed on the inside that nothing on the outside could take credit for. That is not sentiment, that is theology. God's smile is not a feeling, it is a signal. It is the sign that you have crossed a line inside yourself, a line called spiritual maturity, and once you cross it, you do not go back. You have been faithful in ways nobody clapped for. You have obeyed in rooms where nobody was watching. You have honored God with your private moments when your public ones were falling apart. And that, chosen one, that is exactly what disturbs the darkness. Because if God smiled, something else happened at the same time. Something on the other side of the spiritual realm reacted. Because every act that genuinely pleases God, every real moment of inner transformation does not just move heaven, it threatens hell. And that explains everything that came against you after. If you have ever had to obey God in private while nobody around you understood, type this right now in the comments. Heaven saw my yes. Because it did. Every single time. And what happens next? What that private obedience just unlocked, that is what we are going into right now. Let me ask you something direct. Something nobody in your life has had the courage to say out loud. How many times have you been here before? Not in this moment of breakthrough, but in the other moment, the moment right before it, the moment where the old fire lit up in your chest and you did exactly what you always did. You reacted. You defended yourself when God told you to be still. You reopened a door He already closed. You went back to an old comfort that cost you more than it ever gave you. How many times has that cycle played out in your life? 10, 20, 100 times? Here is what no motivational speech will ever tell you, and what heaven needs you to hear right now. Your breakthrough today was not only about what you did, it was about what you finally stopped doing. That is the revelation. That is the hinge. Romans 12:2 does not say, add better behavior on top of your old mind. It says, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Transformed. Not decorated, not adjusted. Transformed. There is a difference between a person who acts differently and a person who thinks differently. One is performance, the other is revolution. And today, chosen one, what happened in you was a revolution. Now let me show you something that is going to shake you. Hell studies repetition. That is not poetry. That is spiritual warfare strategy. The enemy is not creative. He is methodical. He watched you for years. He catalogued your triggers. He memorized your weak points the way a chess player memorizes an opponent's patterns. He knew that when you felt disrespected, you would defend yourself. He knew that when silence stretched too long, you would assume God forgot you. He knew that when loneliness hit at 2 inches the morning, you would reach for something that numbed it instead of something that healed it. He built an entire battle plan around your predictability. And then today you broke the script. Ephesians 4:27 says, "Give no foothold to the devil." But here is what most people miss. A foothold is not just one moment of sin. A foothold is a repeating pattern, a groove in your soul so worn and familiar that darkness can navigate it in the dark. Every time you reacted the old way, you deepened that groove. Every time you rehearsed an offense, you widened it. Every time you craved human validation over divine approval, you handed the enemy the same door key he used last time. But today, you stepped out of the old hallway in the dark. The trap snapped shut right where you used to be standing, and the enemy reached for the old version of you and grabbed air. So let me name the patterns directly, because somebody watching this right now needs to hear their exact cycle called out by name. Were you the one who always reacted too fast, who let your mouth move before the Holy Spirit could intervene? Were you the one who spiraled in fear every time a bill was late, every time a doctor gave an uncertain answer, every time a child stopped calling? Were you the one who kept reopening doors God already closed, going back to relationships that poisoned you, situations that diminished you, habits that stole from you because the familiar felt safer than the unknown? Were you the one who assumed that delay meant abandonment, that God's silence meant God's absence? Were you the one who made major decisions from a place of loneliness, choices driven not by faith, but by the desperate need to not feel forgotten? 2 Corinthians 10:5 commands us to take every thought captive, not most thoughts, not the obvious ones, every thought. Because the enemy does not always attack you with a roar. Sometimes he sends a whisper, a quiet suggestion. This is fine, you deserve this, nothing is changing anyway. And for years, those whispers worked. Until today. Now hear me carefully, because this is where it gets urgent. This is why things felt strangely intense right after your act of obedience. That was not random resistance. That was disruption. When you broke the pattern, you did not just surprise yourself. You disrupted a spiritual frequency the enemy had been tuning for years. He lost legal familiarity with your weakness. And a confused enemy is a dangerous one. He moves fast, he pushes hard, and he sends everything he has to pull you back into the old rhythm before the new one takes root. The pressure you felt right after your obedience was not punishment from God. It was panic from hell. You did not merely behave better today. You altered the battle map. And somewhere in the spirit realm right now, a strategy built against you is being rewritten from scratch, because the person it was designed for no longer exists. That person is gone. If God has been teaching you to stop repeating what nearly destroyed you, type this right now in the comments. The pattern is broken. Say it like you mean it. Because you do. And stay with me, because now that the old cycle has ended, there is something critical you must understand about what begins next. The enemy does not give up when a pattern breaks. He upgrades. And what I am about to show you is exactly how he responds, and why you are more equipped than you have ever been to face it. You felt it, didn't you? Right after that moment of obedience, something shifted, not in a good way. Not at first. Suddenly you were exhausted for no reason. Your mind went foggy. A small irritation turned into a fire. Somebody said the wrong thing at the wrong time. A memory surfaced that you thought was buried. An old temptation whispered your name like it never left. You thought you had done something wrong. You hadn't. That backlash you felt was not punishment. That was panic. Hell panicked. Because here is what most people never get told when you break a pattern that has been running your life for years. You don't just change your behavior. You evict something that had been living rent-free in the space between your trigger and your reaction. Think about a squatter who has been living in a house for 30 years. He knows every room, every creak in the floor, every back door. He has built his whole life around your predictable routine. And then one day, you change the locks. That squatter does not leave quietly. He rattles the windows. He kicks the door. He makes as much noise as possible, hoping you'll let him back in just to make the chaos stop. That was the conflict you felt after your obedience. The enemy was not attacking you because you were weak. He was reacting because you were changing. Ephesians 6:12 does not say you wrestle against difficult people or hard circumstances. It says you wrestle against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this age. Rulers, systems, structures built over time, built on your predictable reactions, your automatic responses, your old cycles. For years, darkness had an algorithm on you. It knew exactly what to say to make you explode. It knew which memory to surface to make you spiral. It knew which person to send to trigger you before a breakthrough. It had studied your patterns the way a thief studies a house before robbing it. And then you broke the pattern. The thief showed up and the locks were changed. 1 Peter 5-8 says your adversary walks around like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. Not whom he can devour, whom he may. He is looking for an opening. He is looking for permission. He is looking for the old door you used to leave unlocked. Your obedience sealed that door, and he has been circling it ever since, trying to convince you to open it again. That's why the fatigue came. That's why the fog came. That's why the irritation came out of nowhere. Not to destroy you, to distract you long enough to crack that door back open before it's sealed permanently. James 4-7 says it plain. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Not fight him for 40 years. Resist, and he flees. But here's what nobody tells you about resistance after breakthrough. The smoke you smell is not the house burning down. That smoke is rising because something unclean is being burned off. When God moves into a space that darkness occupied, there is always a burning, always a clearing, always a discomfort that feels like danger, but is actually deliverance. You are not under attack. You are under renovation. Let me ask you something, and I want you to sit with this question because it is going to cut straight to the bone. How many times in your life have you gotten to the edge of a breakthrough and then something happened that pulled you right back into the old pattern? How many times has that been? 3 times? 10 times? More? That was not coincidence. That was a system designed to keep you cycling, to keep you predictable, to keep you just faithful enough to feel spiritual, but never obedient enough to become dangerous. Because, chosen one, there is a massive difference between a person who believes in God and a person whose obedience disrupts hell's timeline. You just became the second kind. Your one quiet act of obedience disrupted their timing. It broke their emotional leverage. It snapped a cycle that had been reinforcing itself for decades. And now everything they built on your predictable reactions has to be rebuilt from scratch. That is why the attack felt personal, because it was personal. If this message is hitting something real in your spirit right now, if you can feel the truth of it landing in a place words don't usually reach, take a moment right now, like this video, and write in the comments, "My obedience changed something." Say it as a declaration. Say it as a weapon. Because it is both. Because here is what I need you to understand before we go any deeper. God does not smile and then go silent. God does not celebrate a moment of obedience in heaven and then leave you alone to figure out what comes next. What heaven did after that smile, that is where this message becomes astonishing, and that is exactly where we are going next. Let me tell you what you did not see. While you were still processing that quiet moment of obedience, while you were wondering if it even mattered, something happened on the other side of what your eyes can reach. Heaven did not merely approve what you did. Heaven responded. There is a verse that most people walk right past. Hebrews 1:14. It asks this question about angels. Are they not all ministering spirits, sent forth to minister for them who shall be heirs of salvation? Sent forth. Active. Moving. Assigned. Chosen one. The angels assigned to your life did not sit still after what you did. They received new orders. Because when you gave God a new agreement, when you broke that old pattern and chose differently, you changed the terms of engagement in the invisible realm. New agreement, new assignment. And that means the road ahead of you is not the same road it was 72 hours ago. I am not standing here telling you that every inconvenience in your life is spiritual warfare. I am not telling you to see a demon behind every delay or a curse behind every struggle, but I am telling you this, and I need you to hear every word. Sincere obedience invites realignment. When Isaiah 30:21 says, "Your ears will hear a word behind you saying, 'This is the way, walk in it,' that is not poetry. That is architecture. God builds a path around your obedience. Your surrender becomes the foundation He builds on, and He has been building around you. Certain attacks that had legal permission to come near you lost that permission. Certain conversations that were being arranged to pull you backwards were quietly redirected. Certain people who were positioned to drain what God placed in you began revealing who they really were right in front of your eyes. Psalm 91 does not say God might protect you. It says He will cover you. He will be your refuge. No weapon formed against you will prosper. That is not a suggestion. That is a covenant, and your obedience renewed it. Heaven shifted the furniture in rooms you have not even entered yet. Think about that. While you were still standing in yesterday's battle, still catching your breath, still wondering if that one quiet choice even counted, God was already 3 rooms ahead of you, clearing the path. The door that has been stuck for 2 years? There is movement on the other side of it now that was not there before. The relationship that seemed impossible to restore. A softening has begun in a heart you cannot see. The provision that looked like it would never come. Something shifted in the timing. You did not see any of this happen. You were not in the room when it moved. But chosen one, do you not already feel the evidence? Let me ask you something direct. In the last few days, have you noticed something strange? A quiet that settled over you that you cannot fully explain. Less appetite for the noise and the chaos that used to feel normal. A sudden clarity about certain people, like a fog lifted, and you finally saw what was always there. A boldness rising up in you that surprised even you. A discomfort in environments you once tolerated without question. That is not coincidence. That is realignment manifesting in your body, in your discernment, in your spirit. Isaiah said you would hear the voice saying, "This is the way." And something in you has been hearing it, hasn't it? Even when you could not name it. Even when you thought it was just your imagination. Even in the middle of an ordinary Tuesday in your kitchen, you felt it. Something is different now. Something has changed. You did not disappear into silence when you obeyed. Your faithfulness did not evaporate into the air. God keeps books on secret obedience that the world will never see, and those books carry weight. Matthew 25-21. Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a few things. I will make you ruler over many things. Ruler, not just recipient, not just survivor, ruler. What looked like a small and invisible moment on earth was being written down in the record of your hidden faithfulness. And that record just got heavier, more substantial, more consequential. The road ahead was being cleared while you were still in yesterday's battle. Angels received new assignments because you gave God a new agreement. Protection increased, direction sharpened, doors began moving. And yet, the most powerful part is not what moved around you. It is what opened within you, because something cracked open inside you that day that no enemy can close, no person can take, and no season of delay can undo. And that is where we are going next. If you receive that, if you believe heaven is rearranging things on your behalf right now, type this in the comments. God is rearranging things for me, because He is. And what He is building in the hidden place is about to become visible in ways that will leave you breathless. Stay with me. Now I need to tell you something that the enemy desperately does not want you to understand. What you did, that quiet, private act of obedience, it did not just close a chapter. It opened a window. And not just any window, a 40-day window. A season of favor, sealing, clarity, and quiet reversal that begins not with a trumpet, but with a hinge moving in silence. The Bible knows this pattern. After Jesus was baptized, He entered 40 days that forever changed the direction of His earthly mission. After the flood receded, Noah waited 40 days before he opened the door. After Moses obeyed on the mountain, 40 days passed, and when he came down, his face was glowing. Obedience doesn't just impress God, it activates something, and yours just did. Now let me speak directly to someone watching this right now. You are not 25 years old believing God for fame and fortune. You are not asking for your name in lights or your face on a magazine. You have lived long enough to know what you actually need. You need peace. You need stability. You need dignity, the quiet dignity of a life that still makes sense. You need your health to hold. You need proof, real, tangible, undeniable proof that the decades you spent praying were not wasted on a God who wasn't listening. And I want to say something to you that I need you to receive deeply. It is one of the holiest things in the universe for God to restore calm to a weary life. Do not let anyone tell you that is a small request. Do not apologize for wanting peace more than prosperity. Isaiah 40:31 says, "They that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength." Not the young, not the flashy, not the loudest ones in the room. They that wait. That is you. That has always been you. And now the ground is beginning to soften. You know what happens to frozen ground after a long, brutal winter in the Northeast. It doesn't explode open dramatically. It softens, quietly, slowly, from the inside out. And one morning you walk outside, and your foot sinks slightly into the earth, and you know, spring did not announce itself. It simply arrived. That is what is happening in your life right now. In the next 40 days, do not look for earthquakes. Look for the subtle shifts, because they are coming. Financial leaks that have drained you for years, they are closing, not all at once, but one by one, quietly, like a hand pressing against the cracks in the wall. That mental fog, that exhausting, grinding confusion that has made every decision feel like climbing a mountain in the dark, it is beginning to lift. That emotional chaos, the restlessness in your chest, the low-grade grief that follows you from room to room, it is losing its grip. And then the unexpected calls will come. The door you stopped knocking on. The name you stopped bringing up in prayer because hope felt too dangerous. The opportunity that looked like it passed you by 3 years ago. Watch, because Psalm 126:1 says, "When the Lord restored the fortunes of Zion, we were like those who dream, not like people who planned it, not like people who earned it, like people who dreamed it and woke up to find it was real." That is the nature of this window. There is a rusted gate somewhere in your life. You know exactly which one I am talking about. You have pushed against it so many times that your hands know the feel of the cold iron. You have prayed over it. You have wept at it. You have stopped trying to open it because the rust convinced you it was sealed permanently. But rust does not mean permanent. Rust means it has been a long time. And long times end. Job 42:10 records one of the most stunning reversals in all of Scripture. The Lord restored Job's losses when he prayed for his friends, not when Job argued his case, not when Job demanded answers. When he prayed for someone else, when he moved from his own pain into someone else's need, the restoration began. That act of obedience you made, that moment where you chose differently, it may have been exactly that kind of turning point. Not every blessing arrives the same way. God is not predictable. He is not a formula, but obedience, quiet, costly, private, obedience almost always begins a chain reaction, and the chain is already moving. Old burdens, the ones you have carried so long you forgot, they were not supposed to be yours, they are beginning to lift. Not all at once, but you will notice, one morning soon, that your shoulders feel different, that your breath comes easier, that something heavy is no longer sitting on your chest when you wake up. That is not coincidence. That is heaven sealing the house before pouring in the new oil. You cannot put new oil into a leaking vessel. God has been waiting patiently, faithfully, without giving up on you for the moment when the vessel was ready. And chosen one, you just became ready. There is still one more reason God smiled at you, and it is the deepest reason of all, deeper than what He is giving you, deeper than what He is opening for you, deeper than the 40-day window, deeper than the financial shift, deeper than the peace that is coming. It has to do with who you are becoming, and before this message ends, I am going to show you exactly what that means. But right now, if something in your spirit just recognized this season as yours, type it in the comments. I'm entering a new season, because you are, and heaven is watching you walk through the door. Let me ask you something nobody has ever asked you directly. After everything you have lived through, the losses, the silent years, the prayers that seemed to go nowhere, the faithfulness that nobody witnessed, did you ever wonder if any of it was actually building something? Because here is what God wants you to know today. It was. Every single day of it. There comes a moment in the spiritual life when God is pleased, not because you finally received the blessing, but because you finally look like someone who can carry it. That moment happened for you, recently, quietly, in a room where nobody was watching, and it changed everything. Here is what most people misunderstand about the Christian walk. They believe that obedience is an action. Do the right thing, say the right words, follow the rules. But what God saw in you, what made heaven go still and watch, was not an action. It was evidence. Evidence that you are no longer the same person you were 5 years ago. Evidence that the wound that once controlled you has lost its grip. Evidence that something deeper, something unshakable, has been forming in you through decades of quiet, unseen faithfulness. Romans 8:29 says, God predestined us to be conformed to the image of His Son, not perfected, not celebrated, conformed, shaped, pressed. Slowly, painfully, irreversibly formed into something that reflects the character of Christ. That is what He saw in you. Not performance, formation. And I need to speak to those of you who have been walking with God for 40, 50, 60 years. You who have buried spouses. You who have raised children through storms you never asked for. You who sat in hospital waiting rooms, holding someone's hand and praying when you had nothing left to pray. Listen to me. God is not wasting your years. Psalm 92:14 says, They shall still bear fruit in old age. They shall be fresh and flourishing. Your later years are not a footnote. They are a distillation. Do you understand what distillation means? It means everything impure has been burned away. Everything cheap has been removed. What remains is the most concentrated, most powerful, most potent version of what was always there. You are not at the end of something. You are the refined product of everything God has been building since the day you first said yes to Him. Think about crude oil pulled from the earth. Dark, unrefined, rough. Nobody looks at it and thinks that is holy. But take that crude oil through fire, through pressure, through process, and it becomes anointing oil, pure, fragrant, set apart. That is you. Think about an old piece of weathered wood, cracked by decades of sun and rain, worn down by years of weight. Nobody looks at that wood and sees a treasure, but a craftsman does, because weathered wood does not warp. It does not splinter under pressure. It holds. And when a craftsman takes that wood and builds an altar from it, that altar carries a weight that new wood never could. You are that wood. And God is building an altar. 2 Corinthians 3:18 says, "We are being transformed into the same image from glory to glory." Not in a moment, not in a single prayer meeting. Glory to glory, layer by layer, season by season, battle by battle. And that moment you had recently, that quiet, 5-second act of choosing differently, was not a small step. It was proof that the transformation is working. You are stronger than the wound that once defined you. You are less ruled by the emotions that once controlled you. You are harder for darkness to manipulate than you were a year ago. You are safer to entrust with more because God has watched you hold the little things with faithfulness. A vessel that has stopped leaking can finally carry glory. That is what you have become. There are people in your life who still see the old you. They still treat you like the person who used to react, who used to break, who used to carry bitterness like a second skin. Let them, because God does not see the old you anymore. He sees what you are becoming. And what you are becoming is someone built for the next season. A season heavier and more glorious than anything you have carried before. In the final stretch of this message, I am going to tell you exactly what to do next, so you do not accidentally interrupt what God just started in you. Because the most dangerous moment for a chosen one is right after a breakthrough. That is when the enemy comes back, not with a flood, but with a whisper, and you need to be ready. But right now, before we move forward, if you feel that God has been shaping you through years of quiet battles, through losses nobody saw, through faithfulness that received no applause, type this in the comments. I'm ready to carry it well, because you are, and heaven already knows it. Now I need to talk to you about something that could cost you everything you just gained. Because here is what nobody tells you after a breakthrough. The enemy does not attack you before the shift. He waits. He lets you feel the joy. He lets you breathe. And then when your guard is down, when you start talking, he moves. And most people lose in the first 72 hours. Not because they weren't chosen, not because God's promise wasn't real, but because they opened their mouth too soon. Proverbs 18:21 says it plainly, "Death and life are in the power of the tongue." Your words do not just describe your reality, chosen one. Your words build it, or they burn it down. So here is your first instruction. Write it on the wall of your mind. Do not announce everything. Not every seed needs air before it has roots. You would not dig up a seed from the ground just to show a stranger it was growing. You would protect it. You would water it in silence. You would guard it until it was strong enough to survive exposure. What God just started in you is that seed. There are people in your life, and I want you to really hear this. There are people in your life who do not have the spiritual capacity to carry what He placed in you. They are not evil. They are not your enemies. They simply do not have the container for it. And when you pour sacred things into the wrong vessel, it spills. Do not hand strangers the blueprint of what God is building. Not yet. Here is your second instruction, and this one is going to sting. Do not reopen what God already closed. You know exactly what I'm talking about. That conversation you had 5 years ago that still sits in your chest like a stone. That person who hurt you. That wound you revisited again and again, hoping this time it would finally make sense. God delivered you from that door. And here you are, standing at the threshold of the greatest season of your life, with your hand on the handle, ready to walk back in. Ecclesiastes 3-7 says there is a time to keep silence and a time to speak. This is your season of silence. The conversation is closed. The chapter is sealed. You do not go back. Because here is what the enemy knows that you forget. Every time you reopen that wound, you slow the healing. And a wound that never closes never becomes a scar. And a scar is what makes you a testimony. Stay close to peace. This is your compass now. If something steals your inner steadiness, a conversation, a news cycle, a memory, a person, examine it. Not with panic, with discernment. Philippians 4-6-7 promises a peace that surpasses all understanding. That peace is not accidental, it is a signal. When it leaves, something is wrong. When it returns, you are back on course. Trust that signal more than your emotions. Watch your mouth. You broke a pattern through obedience. Do not cancel in fear what you birthed in faith. The moment you feel doubt creeping back in, and it will come, chosen one, it always comes. Do not give it a voice. Because the second you speak doubt over what God just built, you hand the enemy a key he did not earn. Habakkuk 2-3 says, "Though it tarries, wait for it. It will surely come. Delay is not denial. Silence is not absence. The seed cracking underground makes no sound. That does not mean nothing is happening. That means everything is happening where you cannot see it. Do not dig up the seed to check if it's growing." And finally, this is the most important instruction of all. Thank God before you understand everything. You will not have all the answers. The full picture will not be visible yet. But gratitude is not a response to clarity. Gratitude is an act of faith. It seals perspective. It locks in what God just unlocked. It tells heaven, "I trust you even in the silence." Guard the flame while it is becoming fire. Because this was never just a message about one act. It was a message about the smile of God over your entire becoming. Every quiet choice, every private obedience, every moment you chose peace over reaction, silence over argument, faith over fear. It all counted. Heaven kept the record. And right now, God is not just smiling at what you did. He is smiling at who you are becoming. If you are making a decision today to guard what God is doing in you, type this right now. I will protect this season, because what comes next, what I am about to show you, is what happens when a chosen one finally steps fully into the weight of their assignment. And you have never seen anything like it. Let me tell you what actually happened. Not in your living room, not in your car, not in whatever quiet corner of this world you were standing in when you made that choice. I'm talking about what happened above you. The moment you held your tongue when every nerve in your body was screaming to speak, heaven tilted. The moment you let it go when every old survival instinct told you to grip it tighter, a lock turned. Not a lock on a door you could see. A lock on a season. A lock that has been rusted shut for years. A lock that your prayers alone couldn't open, that your tears alone couldn't move, that your faithfulness alone had been working on quietly, invisibly for longer than you know. And in one small moment of surrender, the key turned all the way. You want to know what broke? The cycle. The one that ran through your family before you were born. The pattern that kept repeating. Same wound, different decade. Same reaction, different relationship. Same chain, just a newer link. You broke it, not with a sermon, not with a declaration, with one quiet, private, costly act of obedience that nobody applauded. Proverbs 16:32 says it plainly, "One who is slow to anger is better than the mighty, and one who rules their spirit than one who captures a city." You didn't just rule your spirit today. You captured something the enemy had been holding for years. Chosen one, I need to say something directly to you now, and I need you to receive it. Not just hear it. You are not who you were. That version of you that reacted instantly, that defended automatically, that protected yourself because no one else ever did, that version had a reason to exist. That version kept you alive through things that should have destroyed you. But that version's job is finished. Because what God is calling you into now requires a different kind of person. Not harder, freer, not louder, deeper. Your silence was not weakness, it was warfare. Your restraint was not fear, it was maturity that hell cannot calculate. Your obedience was not surrender to people, it was surrender to God, and those are two completely different things. And here is what I need every single one of you to hear, especially those of you who have been faithful for 40, 50, 60 years, and you still wonder if it counted. It counted. Every private battle you fought and won in secret, it counted. Every morning you got up and chose faith when the evidence said give up, it counted. Every time you showed up for someone else when nobody was showing up for you, heaven kept the books. And that account does not expire. The Bible says in Galatians 6-9, "Do not grow weary in doing good, for at the proper time you will reap a harvest if you do not give up." The proper time, not their time, not your timeline, God's time. And chosen one, his timing just moved. You are not too late. Let me say that again because I know what the enemy has been whispering. You are not too late. Your years were not empty. Your private battles were not invisible. Your faithfulness in rooms where no one clapped, in seasons when no one called, in decades when the promise felt like it had gone completely silent, none of it was wasted. Anna prayed in the temple for 84 years, Luke 2:37. 84 years of showing up before dawn when nobody was watching, when the temple was cold, when her knees ached and the answer hadn't come. And then one morning, one ordinary morning, she walked in and saw the face of God wrapped in a baby. She didn't miss it. Neither will you. Because morning is breaking right now, not the kind that comes after a good night's sleep, but the kind that comes after a long interior winter. The kind that cracks the sky open after years of darkness and reminds you that the sun never actually left. It was working, underground, in the cold, in the hidden places. Your spring is here, Father, right now, in this moment. I stand in agreement with every chosen one who has stayed faithful in silence. I break every old cycle that has been running in their life and in their bloodline. I seal their peace, the peace that passes understanding, the peace that doesn't require explanation, the peace that stands guard over a mind that has been under attack. I bless their home, every room, every relationship, every empty chair at the table that represents a prayer not yet answered. I declare, the answer is in motion. I strengthen their body. Where exhaustion has settled in from years of carrying what was too heavy, I speak renewal. Psalm 103-5, youth renewed like the eagles. I guard their mind from the voice that says it's too late, from the arithmetic of regret, from the lie that their best days have already passed. And I release over them favor they didn't have to manufacture, wisdom that rises without warning, and holy timing that makes everything fall into place at once. Chosen one, God smiled over you today, not because you were perfect, not because you had it all together, but because you finally chose alignment over impulse, surrender over self-protection, obedience over the old survival that kept you small. A father watches his child take that first free step away from the wall, away from the fear, out into open space, and something rises in his chest that has no name in any human language. That is what happened in heaven today. Over you. If this word was for you, type it right now. God smiled over me. Share this with someone who has been obeying God in silence. Someone who needs to know their faithfulness has not been forgotten. And if you want more messages that strengthen you for the season you are entering, stay close. Because what God just unlocked in your spirit today is only the beginning. Your latter season will carry weight, beauty, and holy astonishment. Walk into it.